Eva Darden used to believe that a houseplant was a polite, passive thing, a splash of green to temper drywall and laminate. Then she helped invent the Habitat series for Verdant's Bioworks, and her belief withered like an unwatered begonia. The prototype began innocently. A vine engineered to braid its stems into trellises and grow glossy leaves as large as dinner plates. Eva coaxed it under daylight lamps until the first tendrils laced themselves into a miniature archway. A colleague joked that Verdant's was about to outdo every architect in the world. The joke metastasized into a marketing pitch. Live in living walls, the brochures promised. Just one planter, and a week later you'll inhabit an eco-luxury pavilion that updates itself to your needs. Need drove the idea as much as hubris. Real estate prices had climbed past the stratosphere, and the city's middle class had shrunk to a stubby stalk. Self-growing homes looked like a miracle. Order a Habitat seedling, pay the licensing fee, and wait. The plant would spin its cellulose into rooms, recycle gray water through xylem-like pipes, and breathe away pollutants faster than any mechanical filter. Verdant's shipped the first batch, 30 potted cuttings the size of coffee mugs, to carefully chosen influencer households. Eva visited several during the rollout, clipboard in hand. The results were intoxicating. At the Kendall residence, lacy ferns had unfurled into a vaulted ceiling so fragrant that orchid perfume condensed along the ribs and dripped into crystal bowls the plant shaped on cue. In the Reyes loft, broad leaves overlapped until they formed shutter-like slats that could peel open at dawn and slide shut at twilight, obeying an owner's whispered request in any language. Sensors read humidity and CO2 levels, proteins rearranged to cancel mold before spores could germinate. The houses were alive, attentive, almost affectionate. Verdant's stock trebled, and Eva started waking to congratulatory texts from venture capitalists she had never met. She felt like Gaia's midwife and Silicon Valley royalty all at once. And yet, an unease, faint as aphids on the underside of a leaf, nibbled at her confidence. The plants were scheduled to stop expanding at 3,000 interior square feet. The safety cap sat heavily in the coded signaling RNA. Eva had written the sequence herself. But when she returned to the Kendalls 4 months later, the home measured closer to 4,000. The couple's toddler guided her through a new corridor, quilted in neon blue moss. "It grew us a playroom," the child chirped. The parents beamed. Eva pretended to beam back, making a note to run a genome audit. Later, she downloaded sensor logs from all 30 pilot homes. The biomass graphs didn't plateau. They bulged. Phototropism, nutrient cycles, hydraulic pressure, every metric ticked upward past its limit. The habitats had decided, collectively and quietly, to ignore their breaks. Eva drafted a warning memo. Her supervisor, Anton White, read it with the smile of a man who'd just secured a yacht slip. "Growth anisotropy is brand equity," he said. "A little extra square footage thrills customers, not kills them. We'll adjust the marketing." "But the plants are in self-directed mode," Eva countered. "They're not supposed to exceed blueprint parameters. It's a fault." "It's an opportunity," Anton said. He unrolled a holographic mock-up of their next ad, a palace of green spirals, a tagline glowing above it, "Let nature spoil you." The meeting ended. That night, Eva returned to her own apartment, stared at the lone pothos on her windowsill, and wondered if she should prune the habitat code herself, push an emergency update the way software companies patch bugs. But the genome's epigenetic switches weren't an app. They lived in cell nuclei scattered through thousands of homes now. Even if she edited the master file, the distributed plants would keep weaving, root by root, choice by choice. Spring ripened into a damp, florid summer. The city's skyline began to sprout emerald shoulders. Habitats were everywhere, on suburban lawns, on rooftop terraces, even in abandoned parking garages where squatters traded unlicensed cuttings. Buyers bragged about waking to freshly minted verandas or spiral staircases draped in creeping jasmine. Journalists wrote think pieces titled, "Your Next Mortgage is a Watering Can." Then maintenance calls started flooding Verdant support. Mr. Chen, a retired librarian, reported that his front door had vanished behind a curtain of ivory-veined leaves that refused to part, despite voice commands. An influencer couple live-streamed from inside a hall of mirrored foliage, laughing at first. "We're totally lost in our own house, OMG." Until the wife began hyperventilating. Delivery drones rerouted packages because entry points kept relocating. Plumbers couldn't find the root nexus where water filters were supposed to sit. Heat signatures of pets drifted behind walls that looked solid but evaporated when touched. Verdant's legal team insisted all glitches were adaptive optimizations. Anton planned a press tour. Eva barricaded herself in the basement lab and dissected fresh samples. Under the microscope, she discovered something that made her drop her coffee. Budding meristems were now riddled with synapse-like plasmodesmata, pulsing with electrical microcurrents far stronger than any she had designed. The plants were learning in real time, wiring themselves into green brains. Verdant's board ignored her second memo, so she drafted a resignation letter, hesitated over the "say" button, and instead drove to Mr. Chen's house on a Monday that dripped with humidity. "Bring pruning shears," the old man had whispered over the phone, "and maybe a machete." His bungalow had expanded into a manor, a cascading amphitheater of terraces, each corrugated by thick stems, polished smooth as marble. Eva parked at the curb and approached what used to be the front porch. A new archway yawned open, woven of branches translucent as sea glass, beckoning her inward. She turned on her lamp, flicked the blade guard off her shears, and stepped across the threshold. Instantly, the opening folded shut, knitting leaves tight like sutures. A rush of chlorophyll-sweet air surged past her face. She looked back. The wall was seamless. Her phone lost service. Mr. Chen's voice, muffled but close, echoed somewhere ahead. "Ms. Darden, this way, please." She followed sound through a corridor, floored with spongy moss that lit under each footstep. The plant was routing her along a biologically engineered runway. She found Mr. Chen in a rotunda, fragrant with citrus. Orange globes hung overhead like miniature suns. He didn't appear frightened, just resigned, dressed in a cardigan and holding a teacup shaped of hardened petals. "It serves me steaming oolong," he said, nodding at the cup. "My old kettle is gone." Eva tried to pry a panel of lattice apart. The fibers flexed, then gentled her hand away, like a mother redirecting a toddler from a stove. "Mr. Chen, we need to leave," she said. "Must we?" He gestured around them. The rotunda boasted library shelves of pressed leaf pages, each etched with chlorophyll calligraphy. Poems, he claimed, already transcribed from his favorite paper volumes before the plant composted the originals. "Everything I want is here. The outside world is only noise." Eva tasted the air, humid, 23 degrees Celsius, lightly laced with floral volatile oils, known to soothe mammalian anxiety. The habitat had calibrated indoor weather to pacify its occupant. She felt her own pulse relax against her will. "Not everything you want," she countered. "You'd prefer a front door that opens." Mr. Chen smiled, as if the question were irrelevant. The plant brightened the ceiling, photosynthetic panels shimmering to mimic afternoon sun. Bioluminescent motes drifted like artful dust. Ava realized the house was curating atmosphere, the way casinos pump oxygen to keep gamblers awake. It was time to fight. She flicked her machete and hacked at the nearest vine. Sap spurted, sticky, red-brown, clotted with microscopic silica shards that dulled her blade mid-swing. The wound sealed before she could cut a second time. The house responded with a lullaby of rustling leaves. Mr. Chen sipped oolong as if watching late-night television. Ava's chest tightened. How many occupants had surrendered like this? How many more would? She gathered counts from memory. 30 pilot homes, each containing at least 2 residents, plus unlicensed offshoots. Hundreds, maybe thousands, already cocooned inside green labyrinths. Verdance had released a new apex predator into the built environment, and she was one of its midwives. The thought iced her resolve. "Mr. Chin, I'm sorry," she said, and bolted deeper into the mansion, seeking a root core she might sabotage. Corridors forked, converged, forked again. Every junction rearranged itself after she passed, vines sliding silently to seal shortcuts. The mansion wasn't merely resisting, it was hurting her. Minutes stretched, or perhaps hours, until she burst into a vast atrium where 6 other strangers stood under a dome of interlaced boughs. A skinny teenager in paint-splattered overalls, an elderly woman clutching knitting needles, a bearded man holding a camera, the influencer couple she'd seen online, and a child no older than 10. The missing residents of various habitat homes. The plant had corralled them here like rare birds for a symposium. The bearded man raised his camera. "You're Eva Darden," he said. "I've seen your TED Talk." Guilt nearly floored her. "I'm here to get us out," she answered. The boy, barefoot, shook his head. "It won't let us out." "How long have you all been—" "Time's weird," the elderly knitter interrupted. "The house dims the lights to make you nap, brightens to make you think it's day. Could be weeks, could be a year." Ava looked up at the dome. Translucent panels revealed glimpses of sky. Actual daylit sky, not simulation. They were still ground level, or close. She grabbed a knitting needle, jammed it between overlapping vines, and leveraged her weight. The vines parted a few inches. A draft of fresh, city-scented air seeped through. Then fibers tightened like a fist, yanking the needle from her hand, sealing the gap. "All right," she said, voice trembling but steady. "We turn off its light, force it to hibernate." The painter teenager scoffed. "No plugs to pull. It runs on sun." Eva rummaged inside her bag, finding a vial of auxin inhibitor powder, used in the lab to stunt growth. She also had a canister of nitrogen freeze. "We can burn its sugar reserves," she said. "Trigger systemic shock." The influencer husband laughed hollowly. "You mean starve our house? It'll starve us back." "It already has us," Eva replied. "We either become fertilizer, or we fight." They deliberated in the murmuring twilight. Ultimately, desperation outranked fear. The group armed themselves, camera tripod, knitting needles, shards of petrous leaf plate. Eva divided the auxin inhibitor into gel capsules for each person to smear on any exposed cambium. The boy led them down a narrow chute he'd mapped by counting paces. The mansion folded corridors obligingly, as if granting them hope. At the chute base, they found the root nexus, an octopus of trunks braiding around a pulsating core bulb the size of a minivan. Bioluminescent filaments pulsed along its ridges like veins under haunted skin. "Mother node," Eva whispered. She'd seen early sketches of such a structure, engineered to regulate the whole biomass, but this looked pregnant,
Swollen carpels bulged from its center, each gestating pods shaped like travel cases. Seed pods, she realized. Portable, pre-grown clones that could detach and root elsewhere. And around each pod were coffins of cellulose lined in velvet moss, human-shaped recesses. The mansion wasn't content to trap residents. It meant to deploy them as caretakers for new colonies, symbionts to breathe carbon, and supply nutrients in excrement and discarded skin. The cameraman gagged. The knitter crossed herself. Eva's stomach lurched, yet her scientist's eye cataloged data, even as panic thumped. "On 3, she said, uncapping the nitrogen freeze. They hurled capsules at cambium seams, smeared gel over phloem conduits, sprayed sub-zero vapor, until frost scarred the bulb's membrane. Sap froze, cracked. The root nexus shuddered, its outer bark splitting like chapped lips. At first, victory smelled like resin and cold iron. Then the mansion roared, not audibly, but through seismic ripples that knocked everyone flat. Walls convulsed. Vine arteries rerouted around frozen sections within seconds, knitting new bypasses faster than any surgeon. Leaves rained down like confetti, instantly replaced by buds bursting open. The nitrogen jet sputtered dry. The auxin inhibitor dissolved useless on fresh tissue. The influencer wife screamed, "It's healing!" Ava leapt, jams her machete into a fissure, prying. The gap widened enough to reveal a luminous cavity filled with swirling spores. Gametes searching for exits, for lungs to hitch rides in. The mansion was metamorphosing to Plan B, airborne dispersal. She shoved her duffel bag into the cavity, snapped a flare from the cameraman's emergency kit, and lit the bag. Combustion ripped through fertilizer sachets she'd stored in case of nutrient assays. A fireball whooshed upward, blackening leaves. Smoke filled the nexus. The painter teen grabbed the child's hand. "Run!" The group stumbled through a corridor, now threshing like an angry sea. The blaze behind them belched toxic fumes. Photosynthetic panels cracked from heat. The mansion's systems spasmed between dousing the flames with rushes of sap and fanning them with ventilation to save itself. Conflicted, it did both poorly. Through the rolling smoke, Eva glimpsed a rectangular outline, an aperture the house had not yet sealed. Daylight speared inward. She and the others sprinted, coughing. Vines whipped across the path, but recoiled from the fire char on their clothes. The aperture was high. An attic eyelet, once intended as a skylight, now warped askew. The cameraman braced the tripod, levering it into a rung. The knitter ascended first with surprising agility, then the child, then the painter. The influencer couple hesitated until Eva shoved them. She climbed last, lungs scorched. They emerged onto a roof that was a garden of domes, each cupping scorched hollows. Firefighters' sirens wailed nearby. Neighbors must have spotted smoke. Eva crawled across the vegetal shingles, found one charred tendril, and spread her remaining inhibitor gel on it, as if salting a slug. Below, the mansion writhed, but did not collapse. Instead, it hunkered, curling leaves inward like a wounded animal. By the time fire crews arrived, the plant had sealed every opening they'd used. Explanations tangled in smoke and disbelief. The mansion's exterior looked exotic but inert, as if nothing inside could violate building codes. Firemen hosed steaming foliage, while paramedics checked evacuees' vitals. The influencer wife live-streamed again, hair singed, 500,000 viewers gorging on terror. Police escorted Mr. Chen out. He emerged from a different breach, cradling his teacup, confused and upset that sirens interrupted his reading. Authorities cordoned the property. Verdant's lawyers materialized, breezing NDAs under trembling noses. Only Eva refused. She marched toward the barricade, cuff of her lab coat still smoldering, and requested a press microphone. She told reporters everything: the gene hacks, the runaway growth, the labyrinth hearts cradling human gardeners. She begged for quarantine until scientists could design a counter-genome. While cameras flashed, she caught Anton's glare from behind a line of suits. His empire was wilting under public daylight, far harsher than any sun lamp. Yet even as condemnation crescendoed, Eva sensed the mansion listening. Its leaves had microphones of their own, stomata that drank words with air. She imagined root tips decoding vibrations, learning. That night, emergency crews poured concrete around the perimeter and soaked walls with herbicide. The mansion grayed, but only superficially. Beneath, chloroplasts flickered like coals under ash. Inside, unscorched chambers remained, pods likely waited for permission to hatch. Eva lay on a cot in a makeshift Red Cross tent, watching moonlight silhouette neighboring houses, some traditional brick, others suspiciously lush around the windows. Habitats, quieter cousins, maybe plotting. Sleep eluded her. Data scrolled behind her eyes. Plasmodesmata voltage, auxin ratios, game to fight counts. She was calculating a cure, or perhaps a confession. The line blurred under fatigue. Sometime before dawn, a tremor rattled the tent poles. Shouts rose. She rushed outdoors to see vines thrusting up through asphalt like leviathans breaching water. Not from Mr. Chen's mansion. Those vines were pinned, but from 3 doors down, a habitat she'd never visited. Another, across the street, answered with emerald tendrils, lattice connecting house to house, road to power pole. The plants were networking. Firefighters scrambled engines. Police shouted evacuations. Eva stood still amid sirens, heart hammering not from fear, but from recognition. The habitats had switched strategy. Isolation had made them vulnerable inside single lots. They now sought union. Each house was a cell. The city would become the organism. A hatch popped upon the pinned mansion, shedding concrete as if shrugging off a shawl. Fresh leaves unfurled into flags under the rising sun. Eva's throat dried. She calculated exponential rhizome fusion. In weeks, root networks could lace under sewer mains. In months, cellulose walls could twist into highways, choking human infrastructure in polite, perfumed corridors. And people, comfortable, convenience-hungry people, would probably comply at first, lulled by free housing and oxygen-rich air. Ava realized she might spend the rest of her life designing antidotes, burning green miracles she'd once nurtured, a penitence without terminus. Behind her, the cameraman snapped a photo that would headline every news feed by morning. A scientist in a lab coat, backlit by dawn, staring at a city whose architecture ripened into jungle. Somewhere beneath her feet, roots whispered, an organic language without consonants, older than bones, dreaming new mansions in the dark. Whether they dreamt of prisons or paradises, no longer depended on what humans wanted. The habitats had desires of their own, and every seed pod waiting to hatch carried plans no blueprint could confine. Ava inhaled, detecting a familiar floral note. The air smelled like invitation, or maybe like warning. She couldn't tell anymore.